minutes. What we're watching right now is this particular cell, which has been moving very quickly off toward the northeast. Many of you are familiar with Jeffersonville, right down 71, and it looks like that's the path that storm is taking at this point. So if we track that northeast at about 45 to 50 miles an hour, the storm seemed to be accelerating a little bit, just moments away from Jeffersonville. Mount Sterling at 352, Harrisburg at 401, Prairie Township at about 10 after 4, and Upper Arlington getting into Franklin County in about 45 minutes. At this time, there are no warnings for Franklin County, but if this past history is an indication of how things are going to progress, then I fully expect that Franklin County is going to be under the gun. Also notice how fast those storms are moving. Right now we're watching the characterization of this storm kind of taking in that shape of a bow echo, that echoing or bulging outward. So we're going to stop this right now. We're going to take down this track in the towns for the moment, and we're going to move to something that we're looking for. These are radar indicated tornadoes, which means at the time they're not yet reaching the ground or producing damage that we're aware of, but the National Weather Service radar is showing and indicating where we see the different colors together very closely, some of the greens and the reds. If we can get this up to speed, that oftentimes shows that circulation is not very tight right now at the latest scan, but that's what we continue to watch right now. If you look closely just around Jamestown, there seems to be a little bit of a difference right there with some red and green close together. Bottom line for your watching at home, to break it down for you, where there's red and green, that means that the wind is shifting in different directions relative to the radar, and that's an indication that that storm is starting to spin. That's why radar indicator is often the best first indicator of a possible tornado, and that's the case with these particular cells right now. Again, moving northeast at about 50 miles an hour. So that's the newest one. Actually, I take that back. We just saw one. If I can move out of the way now, I can see that blinking orange. That's an indication to us of another thunderstorm warning that's popping in for parts of Fayette County over towards Circleville right now. Again, getting closer and closer to Columbus. Many of the kids are still at school. Many of you are still at work. Some folks at home are watching or maybe getting the alerts on their phones. One thing I want to remind you of is that if you have the opportunity, make sure your electronics are charged. If you have to take shelter, you can always catch us on 10 TV Plus. You can just go to the app and we'll be streaming this coverage live. So if you have to take shelter, you can't be directly connected with your TV, you've got your mobile device to keep you safe, because we're going to be covering the situation wall to wall. So you see closer inspection where these two individual cells are moving off to the northeast right now, kind of that red and that orange line overlaying each other. A simultaneous severe thunderstorm and a tornado warning, but the bottom line, the greatest threat, of course, is from these particular tornadoes. So I'm going to toss it over to Ross Caruso for a moment, who's been tracking the storms along with us. Ross, we didn't see a whole lot in that particular velocity scan that we popped in, but I think one of the key things we noticed this afternoon since we got in earlier today was just how quickly these storms are moving and actually picking up some speed, and that's not a good sign.
Yeah, Jerry, and especially, we're keeping a close eye on the potential for these storms to kind of ramp up before you know it. And we just got an update from the National Weather Service office in Wilmington, Ohio, that's responsible for issuing these alerts that we're currently seeing in our area. And they did just cancel the tornado warning in Champaign and Clark County, so we still have the two tornado warnings that are in effect. Of course, we have the one that is issued just in the parts of Clark County and the other one that we've just seen over the past 10 minutes or so. So again, a lot of these storms that we have been seeing, we haven't seen a whole lot on the velocity. And again, looking at the velocity, especially where the radar is located at, we're looking at the radar beam height at about 4,000 to 4,500 feet. We can't get that ground truth unless we get confirmation whether or not there's an actual funnel cloud or a tornado on the ground. But just, a strong data suggesting that we are looking at the potential for perhaps a tornado that could be imminent in an area. So that's why when we do have these tornado warnings, it is just the best idea to seek shelter immediately. You want to go to your safe place as soon as possible. You want to make sure that you have those devices with you, multiple ways to receive your alerts in case of power outages. And again, with the storms that we've been looking at, we're not just looking at what's coming through here in central Ohio. You can see that we clearly still have some storms on the back edge here with this system that's going to be approaching towards Dayton. Fortunately, we haven't seen any severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings associated with that, but we're still keeping a close eye on the potential for not only some strong damaging winds, but of course that of some tornadic activity, which was highlighted in our latest slight risk for severe weather. And of course, with the tornado watch that we've been keeping an eye on that had been issued earlier this afternoon, that still looks like, Jerry, it's going to be in effect until 6 o'clock this evening, but we might see that get a little bit tailored here since these storms are moving in a little bit sooner than what the models were first kind of projecting here over the past couple hours.
That's right. And you had mentioned the models, Ross. One of the things we've been watching with the high resolution weather models that we have access to is this first line coming in around 3 to 4 o'clock and still a second line coming back in right around dusk between 5 to 6:30 p.m. But let's take this first line into consideration right now. This is the main threat we're looking at. We're looking at several or multiple severe thunderstorm warnings. Those are the orange outlines, and then we're also looking at that red outline. That's the tornado warning. These storms are picking up speed, moving from 45 now 50 miles an hour off toward the northeast. So we're beginning to get more familiar names to central Ohio and Columbus on some of these storm tracks. Gahanna, for example, 430, Columbus proper 423, Prairie Township 413, Jeffersonville at 338 just moments from now, and then Mount Sterling at 3:57 p.m. That's what this particular storm cell. You can already see, again, the shape of this particular cell. Oftentimes this is not a direct indicator, but as we see these storms begin to bow out or blossom, it's oftentimes that initial edge that can produce some damaging winds. But then behind that, another cell, Ross, if we can look down to the south and maybe stop the radar loop for a second, down to our Washington courthouse, we're seeing this particular curl right there. Again, not an exact indication of a tornado, but oftentimes the characteristics of these storms can be an indication for the meteorologists for us to watch out for where the next potential threat may be. So if we can put a track on this particular cell here and then move this to the northeast, then we'll work our way up to the north for the one around Jeffersonville. Again, these storms will be northeast at about 50 miles an hour. Williamsport 405, New Holland 356, Bloomingburg at 350, and Washington Courthouse, that's about 9 minutes away. This is a severe thunderstorm warning, not a tornado warning at this moment, but even then, do what you can to keep yourself safe. One of the easiest things to remember, no matter what the weather situation is, tornado warning or severe thunderstorm, you want to get inside. You want to keep as many walls between you and the exterior as possible. And if you have a lower floor, that's the safest place to be. One other thing to keep in mind too, and this may sound a little bit frivolous, but absolutely it is not. In a tornado warning, if you have a helmet, take a helmet with you. And if you're taking shelter in the basement, shoes. If you get caught in a situation where you're quickly rushing for shelter, you forget your shoes and you get outside, it may be very dangerous once you get out there. So two things you might not think of right now, but if you have a moment of time and you're in the track of some of these storms, in this particular tornado warning, for example, those are a couple of things you might want to keep in mind. One other thing, we talked about this moments ago, is the 10TV mobile app, a very valuable resource that fits in the palm of your hand. If the phone is charged, good. If it's not charged, you probably want to charge that anywhere within the sound of my voice this afternoon, as that will be a direct communication to us in the 10 TV Weather Center as we're watching these storms in this evolving weather situation. So this, again, just kind of a recap for you. Tornado warning, Clark, Fayette, Greene, and Madison County until 4 p.m. Also a different, separate, smaller tornado warning, and I believe this one probably will expire, although that tornado or that thunderstorm warning is extending until 3:45 for Clark County. So you see some of the updates now, this red flash indication that the tornado warning is being updated by the National Weather Service as that storm moves off toward the northeast. So I'm going to give it over to Ross Caruso just for a moment so he can give us up to speed. One of the things you had mentioned, Ross, is this initial line right here in Columbus timing around 4:30 p.m. The other thing we talked about was there are reinforcements behind that storm that may have us on our toes for the rest of the evening until 5, 6, 7 o'clock maybe.
Yeah, Jerry, and certainly when we were talking about the potential for severe weather today, you know, it was a matter of, okay, how much time is the atmosphere going to have to really play with some of the potential for some of these storms to really blossom? And it really just came to a matter of just maybe a few hours and a lot of the dynamics that were already in play with some strong low-level winds that have kind of allowed for some of these strong storms to form. So you may not think that's the case because temperature is only in the 50s, but that, again, is just one of the many ingredients that come into play when we're talking about the potential for severe weather. Now, again, we did have a few tweaks here with some of the latest updates that we've had with the tornado warnings that have been issued across parts of our area. Again, this is now including just Fayette, Madison County, this latest tornado warning in effect until 4 p.m. It is moving 50 miles an hour towards the northeast. It is radar indicated confirmation, radar indicated rotation. We do not have confirmation that this tornado is on the ground, but again, given the limitations of the radar where we're at, there is strong reason to believe that we could be looking at a potential tornado with this situation, with this individual storm that's moving through. And again, they kind of been outpacing the warning. So you can clearly see that we do have that pre-existing warning that's in parts of Clark County, but clearly that cell has outpaced the storm. And again, we're going to continue to see the potential for this severe weather to unfold across parts of central Ohio through this evening, which is why, again, we have this tornado watch in effect until 6 p.m. And we're going to continue to see the potential for perhaps some tornadic activity, not only just for these areas that we're currently looking at tornado warnings, but going into central Ohio, east central Ohio. Again, most of the state is under this risk for a few tornadoes. Now, again, we do not have any confirmation of any current tornadoes on the ground, but we are looking at these tornado warnings that have been issued from the National Weather Service. And again, this latest one where we've had a few tweaks of, again, this is including parts of Fayette and Madison County, and this is gradually moving to the northeast at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. So we'll give you a quick little track on that. And you can see this is heading in the path of Franklin County into Columbus. So we could very well see this same system possibly move into Franklin County here as we approach the 4 o'clock hour, at which that stage we could still be looking at the potential for some tornadic activity. We're not going to be likely seeing these storms kind of dwindle away, much like maybe some of us are used to, that we typically see severe weather. You know, we see these tornado warnings are nothing long lasting, but given the dynamics and just the potential and environment that we've been looking at for severe weather today, it is looking very possible that we could be looking at, you know, some thunderstorms, tornado warnings that could be lasting longer than what you might be expecting. So definitely some impressive storms that are moving through. And again, looking at that arrival time at Harrisburg, just shortly after 4 o'clock, close to 4:10 in Grove City, Marble Cliff, 4:16, and again, Columbus moving into that 4:15, 4:20 time frame. And that's again where we're going to be looking at the potential for severe weather closer to home here in Columbus. And again, Jerry, you know, this is just the first wave of the potential for some severe weather. We're still looking at some pretty strong storms that are just off to the west, back moving towards Dayton.
So maybe we could take a look at that and take a quick breath, both of us, and then take a zoom out to expand that perspective to show what we're talking about. A couple of the key things that we've been watching, Ross. One, just the dynamics of the atmosphere this afternoon. We knew it was going to be a rough day or very active day, and that's proven to be the case. We'll get to the details of these watches and warnings in just a moment, so bear with us. But I also want to share with you a couple of areas that are dry, and we're seeing some sunshine. That's a bad thing. With the sunshine coming back in, that's adding some additional fuel to the fire that we simply don't need. And that's why we're seeing, even behind this initial area of severe storms rolling through, a second line now that's just maintaining its integrity and staying together right along and just west of I-75 back toward Dayton. And every indication is that that system, that second line, is holding together. So right now, there's no warnings for that particular system, but the entire viewing area is under that severe tornado watch until 6 p.m. today. So we're watching that second line carefully, but let's take a closer inspection of what we've been doing to this leading line right now. So most active weather we're seeing in central Ohio at this moment, that continues to move northeast at about 50 miles an hour. Currently, we have a tornado warning for Fayette, Madison County that goes Monday until 4 p.m. That's about 17 minutes from now. Clearly, I think the southwestern parts of that tornado warning are still in effect, but the main threat we're looking from Midway to the northeast. So if you're in Midway or if you're in the path of this particular storm, we urge you to take the necessary precautions. Harrisburg, 4:03 p.m., Prairie Township, 4:10, Columbus, 4:20, Westerville, 4:31, Pataskala at 4:38. And some of the very simple, easy things that you can do if you're in the path of that storm, you want to be weather aware. That's why we're on the air at 3:43 this afternoon, letting you know and do what you can to keep yourself and your family safe. If you know somebody that might be in the path of this storm, give them a quick call or send them a text message. If you are in the path of this particular storm or in a tornado warning, the best thing to do is keep as many walls between you and the outside as possible. We don't want your pictures and video. We want you to keep yourself safe. Get inside, put as many walls between you and the exterior that you can. A bathroom, a closet, again, just the number of walls. If you have a basement or a lower floor, also a safer place to be. One other thing that many people don't think about, your phone is your lifeline. It could be your lifeline. Keep it charged. If you have a battery pack, keep that. If you have our app, 10TV, we're not promoting the app. We're simply telling you it is an opportunity to stay directly connected with the Doppler 10 weather team, getting that critical information. We're going to be streaming that information to you. So if you're not able to watch us on conventional TV, you can very easily watch the evolving situation on your phone. Two other things, shoes and a helmet. If you are sheltering in place, it may sound silly, but it's not. A lot of the injuries or fatalities from tornadoes are from head injuries. And if you have damage, once you get out of your house or where you're living, you might not have your shoes on. It sounds very simple, but it's actually very important for you, again, to maintain a clear head as possible during this developing situation. So we're going to, go ahead, Ross. No, please.
Had the Clark County tornado warning just expire.
Okay.
Also another severe thunderstorm warning in parts of Clark and Greene County expire as well. So we have seen some trimming with some of these storms, so to speak. So we've seen some of these warnings being lifted, but we're still looking at this same tornado warning again. Just a closer look at this, still that of radar indicated, so no confirmation of a tornado on the ground. But as Jerry was saying, this is the time where you need to seek shelter immediately, not the time to take a peek and see what's going on outside. You need to go to your shelter, your safe space, wherever that may be. If you have a basement, just an interior room, avoid the windows. Now's not the time to look outside and see what's going on. And of course, friends and family that you might have in these areas that, again, we'll take a closer look at the radar so you can see that and just where these storms are moving through. But I'm going to give the latest track on this tornado warning, which still, again, looks like the overall motion moving towards the northeast. Again, this particular tornado warning in Fayette and Madison County, more so out of Fayette now, which literally, as I'm saying that, getting trimmed up in the parts of southern Madison County. So we are getting more updates associated with this storm. So we'll give you a closer look at that. So Fayette County, you're in the clear. Fayette County, you're in the clear with this particular tornado warning. And again, we just got an update from the National Weather Service. This warning now just for Madison County. This is including London, but London is just to the north where we're looking at the main cell where we could potentially be looking at some rotation with this particular warning. And again, this is until 4 p.m. And with the latest on this, it's still moving northeast, and it looks like they have picked up some speed, Jerry. So this particular storm is moving 55 miles an hour. So I'm going to update that so we can give you a better idea of just how soon the storm is going to be moving through.
Just canceled tornado warning.
Just canceled?
Yep. It's great to have two of us here, Ross. Absolute team coverage on this. The National Weather Service just canceled the tornado warning for Fayette County. That coming in at 3:46 p.m. We've got some wind gusts reported with some of these storms, 48 to 53 miles an hour. But this just in that the National Weather Service has canceled the tornado warning for Fayette County right now. So it's still showing up on our radar scan, but of course we have that direct feed with the National Weather Service, so it might take a second for our weather system to catch up right now. We're going to continue to cover this for the next couple of minutes at least, just before we give the all clear and make sure that this warning has indeed been canceled. As Ross was saying, it's picking up speed and we're tracking that particular storm cell. Even without producing a tornado, we're still seeing some potentially damaging wind gusts between 48 and 53 miles an hour being confirmed. And again, that's the wave number 1. We're also watching wave number 2, that line of storms just to the west of I-75 moving east at about the same speed, if not, Ross, just a little bit faster.
Yeah, Jerry, and something too to keep in mind, especially with the potential for severe thunderstorm warnings, just because we're not looking at particular reason for a tornado warning to be issued, we are also looking at the potential for some damaging straight line winds, which have been proven to show that they could have the strength of that of a weak EF0, EF1 tornado. But again, it looks like actually we now have another update with a tornado warning, which is now just south of Ross County. So again, getting more information in from the National Weather Service. We just now have a radar indicated another tornado warning in parts of Adams, Pike, and Scioto County, and this is moving at about 50 miles an hour, located over Peebles. And again, that's moving northeast at 50 miles an hour, Jerry. So even though we're starting to see some of these storms essentially dissolve and weaken as they're moving towards central Ohio, down to the south where it still hasn't had much interaction with the weather and the environment, we're seeing these storms still pretty strong down to the south as well. So I'll get another track on that in a second. But still looking like, again, the warning that we have in Madison County, that has been canceled. So we should be clear there. And it looks like the severe thunderstorm warning in Fayette County is also canceled as well. So we're continuing to see some of these updates as well, but we're continuing to see, obviously, the environment is stable enough to where these storms can fire up and provide potentially some rotation.
So let's pause the radar, at least stop it in a still frame for a second there, and then put a track on the southernmost storm that just popped up right now. You said that was around Peebles, and of course we're watching areas around Waverly, it's Ross, then Pike County. This is for Adams, Pike, and Scioto County. We're primarily focused again on areas in western parts of Pike County as this storm is moving northeast at about the same speed. So we can just track that out for our friends and neighbors down to the south and give them some due attention, as we've been doing for much of the metro in and around Columbus and Central Ohio. So the communities we're watching right now: Pine Gap at 354, Sunfish at 402, Peeble at 411, Pebble, Waverly at 416, and then Mount Sinai at 427. Those are some of the larger towns and cities that you may be knowing or familiar with in the path of that particular storm. Again, that's Pike and Scioto counties, and that particular tornado warning goes until 4 p.m. So let's then scan the radar back up to the north if we could and take a closer inspection as we watch these storms then racing off to the northeast very quickly. Again, Fayette County, that particular tornado warning has been canceled for Washington Courthouse in Fayette County. For Madison County and London, I don't know, has that cancellation been confirmed, Ross?
No, Jerry, that one is still running until 4 p.m. So
Until
we have 10 minutes left on the Madison tornado warning, which was trimmed up prior to that, including Fayette County. Got it.
So let's take a track of that one, because that's the one that poses the greatest threat to the larger population centers in and around parts of Madison, Fayette, and Franklin counties right now. That moving northeast at about 45 to 50 miles an hour. Harrisburg at 403, Grove City 409, Columbus 418, Gahanna 425, and New Albany at 431. Just to be very clear on this, these are radar indicated tornadoes. They have not had a history of producing a tornado, but we are exercising caution and letting you know before our regularly scheduled newscast and keeping on top of the situation. These storms are moving northeast and at the very least are producing some potentially damaging wind gusts. But if you are in the path of this storm, even if you're not one of these communities that are mentioned, so again, if we can look at that particular cone and extrapolate that out, we're talking about a good part of Franklin County, from Worthington and Upper Arlington down to the south, all the way down toward Rickenbacker. So that's the area that we're watching as that moves off toward the northeast very carefully. So just exercise and caution, and better be safe than sorry, right, Ross?
Yeah, and Jerry, we just got another tornado warning that was issued for Fayette, Highland, and Ross County. And again, this is a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado. It was located over Hillsboro, moving northeast at 50 miles an hour. So again, just showing you, even though a lot of the activity is closer to central Ohio, down to the south, we have a lot of untapped atmosphere, so to speak, for these storms to kind of use and strengthen. And again, this is just one of the other latest tornado warnings that we have, aside from the one just further to the south that was including parts of Adams, Pike, and Scioto County. So we're continuing to see these storms fire up and turn to be pretty active heading into this afternoon. So I'm going to get that latest track set up for you there, Jerry, so we can take a look at this. But again, this one also, again, looking at radar indicated. And again, winds up to 60 miles an hour. Of course, we've been looking at some hail reports as well associated with some of these storms. But again, this is just over towards Hillsboro area. And again, this is moving northeast at roughly 50 to 55 miles an hour. And again, yeah, moving 50, 55 miles an hour. So we'll put the latest track on that so you can see. And again, right over Hillsboro, this is going to be moving northeast. That's the trajectory of all these storms that we've been seeing. And again, this is the latest look at that.
So one thing we're watching, Ross, and we haven't seen this, you mentioned radar indicated. We've been watching that, we call that the velocity. So as the storm is moving relative to the radar, if we're seeing different colors and different wind speeds next to that, perhaps if you can take a look at that, see if it's any indication of maybe that be why they're issuing some of those tornadoes warnings. And you can clearly see here in the one around Hillsboro that we call that a couplet. That's where the red and the green are very close to each other. Maybe, I think, appreciate, stop right there. You can see again, that indicates rotation, or that shear, that twist in the atmosphere. That's what the National Weather Service is looking at, and that's why that tornado warning has been issued for those locations. So it isn't always just a lot of the different colors on the radar that you're used to seeing. It's that next level, a little bit of a deeper dive that we're taking and monitoring and taking an in-depth look at some of these storms, and that's exactly why the National Weather Service is indicating that tornado warning. The challenge then is this rotation is happening about a half mile to a mile above the surface. If that rotation continues within the thunderstorm, makes its way down to the surface, that's when we have a significant problem. And that's what we're watching right now. So you can clearly see the very active weather coming in. Not seeing any couplet or any of that shear in around some of these other storms around Midway, Ross, but it's not to mean for a second that they still don't warrant that tornado warning.
Yeah, especially with, again, a lot of the scans that we're getting. This isn't, straight into the storm. This is going to be at an angle. So a lot of the information that you're seeing here isn't telling you the ground truth, which is why, again, when there is a tornado warning, you need to seek shelter immediately, because you want to be able to seek shelter without, having to realize, okay, there's actually a tornado on the ground. You want to get the heads up. So again, we are looking at now 3 tornado warnings. Again, the only one that's closing in on Franklin County is still the one that is including parts of Madison County. Now, we have seen some changes, and again, we'll likely see an update from the National Weather Service here within a matter of moments, just to let you know on where the trajectory is going. But again, what has history been showing us this afternoon? Well, these storms are moving a little bit faster than some of these polygons are being painted, showing you the path of these storms. So again, the National Weather Service doing a great job covering these storms, but they have been picking up some speed. So again, this particular tornado warning that's including parts of southern Madison County, I'll put this on a quick loop here so you can kind of see where it's highlighted in that red polygon. For those that are in southwestern Madison County, you're in the clear as this system is quickly moving out, but this is going to be heading right towards Franklin County. And again, we might see this extension with this particular tornado warning going into parts of Franklin County, possibly even to parts including northwestern parts of Pickaway County. But for right now, we're still looking at this particular tornado warning. And again, Jerry, I'm just going to throw a quick track on here.
Yep.
And most of these storms have been moving at about 50 to 55 miles an hour. So, and moving in that northeast direction as well. So we're going to continue to see these storms kind of barrel through.
So the other thing we're watching, of course, the different colors are not just an indication of what the storm is doing, but an indication of possibly of some hail or some extremely heavy rain. That's where we're seeing the darker and the deeper reds right there. You can see the radar scan freshening that for us. Little Grove City 408, Columbus 417, Gahanna 423, New Albany around 429, 430. And that's the strongest part of the storm. North and south of that, still some very active disruptive weather, but the strongest part of that storm right now, which is just about to exit the edge of that tornado warning polygon or that box, is moving northeast at about 50 miles an hour. So this is what we've been watching, is the thunderstorms actually picking up or accelerating with their speed. And we're also just hearing another warning right now, if that's correct in my ear, that we'll take a look at that. Maybe we can just broaden the scope for just a second, Ross, and see what that latest warning might be. All right, so we're counting 3 tornado warnings right now from north to south. We've got Madison County, we've got parts of down toward Ross County, and then Pike County are under those tornado warnings. There's a new severe thunderstorm warning right now that does include Franklin County. So let's take a closer look right now at this particular cell right here, just west of 42. That is in northern parts of Madison County, just about to move into Union County. Plain City, if you're down 33 or 161 or south toward 42, that's the storm that we're watching right now.
Yeah, Jerry, and you can see that we have still seen some pretty strong storms to the north, and even for, our friends and family living up in Union County, while we're not under any current severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, we are looking at some pretty strong storms moving through. Nonetheless, looking at some non-severe thunderstorm gusts, possibly exceeding that of 40 miles an
right
hour.
Now
but
for parts of Franklin County, Ross.
Yeah, so it looks like they did extend that same tornado warning that was in parts of Madison County that is now including Franklin County. We're going to continue to see the potential for some tornadic activity, including the city of Columbus as well. So we're going to continue to see that as we head in. And that's the emergency alert going on all of our phones, being in Franklin County. So if you're hearing that, you're getting the information just like us as well.
Firsthand.
So we'll give you the latest track on this tornado warning. And again, this is issued for Franklin, Madison, Pickaway County, just as I mentioned. That was a possibility, being in northwestern parts. And this is only moving 40 miles an hour. So this is a tad bit slower. So it looks like this particular cell has slowed down a little bit. And again, I'll change the speed on this to kind of give you an accurate idea of just the timeline of this. But I'm going to leave it up a little bit so give you an extra heads up on the timeline of this particular system. And again, this is moving northeast. It's not changing its trajectory as well. So this is continuing to move northeast at about 40 to 45 miles an hour. And again, this is including parts of Franklin, Pickaway, and also Madison County. But this will soon be out of Madison within the next 10-15 minutes or so, but still including parts of Franklin County. And you can clearly see on that track there, Jerry, where we're anticipating this storm moving through over the next half hour or so.
And one of the things we want to point out, Ross, is the track is one thing, but also notice on either side of that, north and south of that, that does not mean just because you're not in that particular track that we were drawing for you that you're out of the woods. As we're looking at some of those counties and communities, if you are neighboring communities from Grove City, Columbus, Gahanna, New Albany, or Pataskala, and again, we're getting over toward Licking County right now and northern parts of Franklin County, some of these areas are actually beyond, if you look at the red edge right there around Columbus, that's beyond the edge of the tornado warning, but that's been how things have been evolving this afternoon, is that the warnings have been almost outpacing the storm. So even though technically some of those areas, again, Gahanna, New Albany, and Pataskala, you're not in the tornado warning, it's likely that you will be over the next 30 to 45 minutes. So as we're tracking that storm off toward the northeast, we'd like you to exercise extreme caution. So we're going to stop just for a second and remind you again a couple of the key things to do to keep you and your family safe during a tornado warning. We want to put as many walls between you and the exterior as possible, get to the lowest floor possible. You want to take your phone with you if possible, and hopefully that device is charged. If not, take a couple of seconds and charge it, or maybe a battery pack. And remember, if you're not able to watch us on TV, we're streaming this coverage live on 10 TV Plus. It's just a click of a button on your phone. You can easily, again, keep connected to the 10 TV weather team during severe weather. We're looking at the scan right now, the velocity scan, which isn't necessarily showing the reds and greens that we've been seeing, Ross, but we are seeing some different colors of reds, still indicating, again, that twist in the atmosphere. And by the time it gets to Columbus, it's about a half mile to a mile in the atmosphere. So what that means from a weather perspective is that the storm is beginning to rotate above the ground. We're seeing if that rotation eventually reaches the ground, that would be a confirmed tornado. At this point, these tornado warnings are radar indicated tornadoes. It's still a very real threat with some damaging winds, at very least possibility. But at this point, these tornadoes are not reaching the ground. So that is a little bit of good news in what is a very active and rapidly evolving weather situation.
Yeah, Jerry, we just got information from the National Weather Service that they have canceled a tornado warning in Adams, Pike, and Scioto County. And they also expired the severe thunderstorm warning in Madison County. So again, we're still looking at that tornado warning in parts of eastern Madison County, but that will soon expire here. As you can see, the core part of the system where you're seeing that highlight on the scan, kind of showing where the heaviest precipitation is and where we're looking at some of these stronger storms move through. Again, this is starting to move out of parts of Madison County, but still including parts of northern Pickaway County. So again, for those of you that are in down towards Circleville. Again, we're not looking at this particular tornado warning impacting you. This is just the most northwestern part of Pickaway County with this particular tornado warning. But this is kind of bullseye just hitting straight towards downtown Columbus area as this tornado warning. We could see some updates here within the next few moments or so. But right now it's looking like we're just continuing to see some updates from the National Weather Service pertaining to this particular system. And at the moment, currently, we're still looking at this tornado warning. Haven't seen any updates over the past couple minutes, but we're still looking at the potential, again, for tornadic activity. It's radar indicated. We have nothing confirmed with this particular cell as it's moving through parts of southwestern Franklin County. And again, Jerry, looking at just a vast amount of some heavy precipitation that's moving through. So we'll take a closer look at that track here in just a second.
So I believe we have a live shot from one of our photographers, Bob, that's out 270 and 23 right now. We'll take a look at that shot and show some of the areas of the severe weather moving in. Of course, being very careful and cautious while driving. Windshield wipers going at high speed right now. One other thing, in addition to the heavy rain, Ross, I've seen a couple of reports of severe thunderstorm gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. And also I've seen some reports of a 1 inch to 1.5 inch hail, as well as a tree down. So some of these storms are producing some damage. So of course we appreciate the shot from our roving photographer out and about. See traffic moving a little bit slowly and some brake lights out there. And I believe this is coming in from near the center of the storm in and around Franklin County. So be careful out there, Bob. And if you see any damage, of course, pull over and take some video. But again, it's a lot of brake lights and people doing what they can to keep it safe. But there's a pretty dicey situation. I wanted to quickly go back, Ross. You saw the radar scan going over right now. That's showing some areas of some deeper red as that scan comes across. That's the same center of the cell that had produced some of that hail and the damaging winds about 1 or 2 counties to the south and west. So that is under the tornado warning. So if we can just get a track right now from the kind of that arc in the back edge of that particular storm and then move that through at about 50 miles an hour, that might give areas a little bit more of a heads up. And we've actually seen some of these communities on the map already, but Grove City at 412, Columbus 422, Gahanna 429, and then New Albany at 436. And we've been probably repeating ourselves a little bit, but it bears doing so in this situation. If you are in the path in that tornado warning, please exercise caution. We don't want your pictures and videos. We want you to keep you and your family safe. Main thing to do right now, get inside, get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. If you have a basement or a low floor, an interior room, that's where you want to be. And although it may seem somewhat flippant, if you have a helmet, bike helmet, motorcycle helmet, ski helmet, take that with you for yourself and anybody that's in your care, as that's very important. And a lot of injuries or fatalities from tornadoes are from damage or debris in the upper parts of the body. So again, not something that you might hear every day from the 10 TV weather team, but it's something that we're trying to reinforce to you now. So again, we're on coverage right now before our normal 90-minute newscast at 5 p.m. Been going so since 3 o'clock, and I see a new tornado warning, Ross, issued, I believe, just south of the one that's currently in play. So maybe we can take a look, quick view out right now and scan that one. That is for parts of Pickaway County. It looks to be parts of Franklin County as well.
Yeah, so it looks like just to the south there. Now this is including parts of northwestern Pickaway County, and again, still including, parts of the northern warning there. But this was just from the National Weather Service, and again, this is including Franklin, Pickaway County, and this was located 7 miles southwest of Grove City, moving northeast at roughly 40 miles an hour. So it seems like some of these storms have slowed down just a touch, but giving you an idea just kind of the scale at which we're still looking at now. Tornado warning that's down in the south. Again, that's including parts of Ross County as well. So we're continuing to see that warning down to the south, including just the most southeastern part of that of Fayette County. And again, all of these tornado warnings that we have seen thus far have been radar indicated. Again, no confirmation that we do have a tornado on the ground. We haven't seen anything that has reason to believe that we're looking at the potential for a tornado on the ground. But again, with this tornado warning in effect, again, given the limitations of radar, it does a pretty good job at letting us know where we could be looking at a tornado. But in these particular situations, we are looking at the potential for the fact that we could be looking at some quick rotation, something, again, you want to take seriously whenever you're going to be looking at this information. Just know if you're highlighted in the red, again, you want to make sure that you're going to your safe space, and we'll take a close look at this latest warning that we got. Again, this is including parts of Franklin and Pickaway County, and then this is just one of the other warnings that we have. We have another one which is located across parts more so of northern Franklin County, and you can see that we are looking at both of these warnings. As you can kind of tell the difference between the two of them. Again, we're looking at one that's moving in parts of southwestern Franklin County, pushing towards central Franklin County. This particular warning is for Franklin, Madison, Pickaway County, just the northwestern extreme. More so the tornado warning down to the south that is including Pickaway County here is the one where we're looking at this notch, which possibly could be supporting the potential for a tornado. And then the other one, which is located just southwest of Grove City, which is going to be moving to the northeast. So any of these particular locations, again, you need to seek shelter immediately. Looks like we just got word from the National Weather Service that they have canceled the tornado warning that is located in parts of Fayette, Highland, and Ross County. So again, this particular warning that we're looking at right now, this is expired. So they're canceling that warning, expiring it early. So we are going to continue to see these two main storms, tornado warnings that we're looking at. And again, we haven't seen anything really pop up other than just possibly seeing what we like to call couplets, and we're not seeing any sharp changes in the colors here. We're looking at just some plain red, so we're looking at some strong winds. So again, we're not seeing any dead giveaways that we're looking at a tornado on the ground, but again, something that can happen in just a matter of minutes, even seconds, that we can see these quick changes, which is why, again, Jerry, we have this extensive coverage on these particular storms as they're moving through. Yeah, I was just going to say, Ross, I've been looking at some of the tools that are available to us right now, and these particular storms right now are those showing that rotation above the ground, but we're still concerned that that rotation can reach the ground. So we're going to take a closer look right
now and try and get down as close as possible and still keep this relative for you. From Galloway over toward Grove City and over toward Frank Road, we're looking at this storm moving northeast at about 50 miles an hour. So you see that darker red pop up around Frank Road. That's an indication of some extremely heavy downpours and the possibility of some hail. These storms have a history of producing 1 to 1.5 inch as ping pong size or larger hail, in addition to the winds and the possibility of a tornado. So if you're in and around 270 down toward Grove City and 62, Frank Road over toward 104, down 71, even over toward 23. If you're in that zone in southwestern corner over toward Grove City, that's the area that we're watching right now and is most concerning to us. Still not out of the woods, even to the west toward Prairie Township, over toward Hilliard and over toward Rome Road, Galloway as well. And you see occasionally as the radar scan comes around and updates, that's obviously highlighting the areas. You can hear the rain on our roofs. Maybe you're not hearing it through our mics, but we're hearing it right now. Is how heavy that rain is coming down right around our studios around Grandview and southwestern parts of Columbus. So closer inspection again, we're watching that particular storm arcing northeastward. The back edge of that right now is producing some very heavy rain, gusty winds, and if there is going to be a tornado wrapped in this particular storm, it's normally in the central to the back parts of the storm. That's why we're still on a very high alert for all of Franklin County. So Ross, if we could just maybe take a little further track up toward the northeast around Columbus. Many of us are familiar with these areas, but just to put a couple of names in case you might not be paying close attention, maybe listening, we're looking at areas in and around 40. We're down toward High Street to the east, to the west, down 315, and then further off toward the west along Riverside. That's the area around between Upper Arlington, Grandview Heights, and downtown Columbus, and over toward Long Street as well. That's the area that we're looking right now that is under the greatest threat for the storm. And you can look very closely. You see this red line. That technically is the edge of the tornado warning, but what we've been watching all afternoon as these storms are actually accelerating northeastward, that they've been outpacing their particular warning. So that's something that we're watching and will continue to do so, Ross, as the situation evolves. And that's why we're breaking into coverage today before our regularly scheduled newscast.
Yeah, Jerry, I wonder if we could take our Skyview camera really quick, because we do have a view outside where we could see what's going on. We can hear the heavy rain that's falling on our building right now. But again, this is all part of the tornado warning that's coming through. I don't know if we can punch that up into the control room or not. But again, we have been looking at some extremely heavy rain that's been associated with these storms that have been moving through as well. So not only looking at that potential, but of course looking at some strong winds. I'm not sure if we're able to get that camera shot pulled up in our control room or not right now. But again, looking at radar, we are looking at the potential for, not only tornadic activity, extremely heavy rain. Now is not a time to be out on the roadways. For any friends, family, loved ones, if you know that they're out and about around this time, they need to be, staying put in their safe place, whether it's at work, whether it's, on their way to home. You do not want to be driving right now. And we do have another live look right now. We can take that and show you, trying to get confirmation on where we're at right now with that latest drive shot. But again, you can clearly see here, this is 270 on the west side near Alum Creek, and you can see that again, looking at some very heavy rain moving through the area, looking at some ponding and off on the roadways. I'm getting confirmation that tornado sirens are going off. And again, a common misconception is, you don't hear the tornado sirens, if you're inside, that's not what they're made for. They are outdoor alerts for those that are outside. And again, something that, is great, but, they're kind of outdated in today's day and age with technology. So something, again, you want to have multiple ways to receive alerts, especially if you're looking at a situation where there's potential for some strong damaging winds associated with some of these tornado warnings. You definitely want to make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts. Make sure all your devices are charged. Hopefully you're charging them right now as you're watching this, whether you're watching online, on our app, or on 10 TV. Again, make sure, try to plan ahead, because we're planning ahead for you to make sure that you're being as safe as possible with these particularly dangerous situations, which again, we haven't seen any confirmation yet as a tornado is on the ground in any of these locations where we are looking at these tornado warnings. But again, just kind of a bigger picture view here, you can see that we are looking at another update with this tornado warning, which we'll start with this real quick. This is just centered over Commercial Point, north and east of Darbyville. So on State Route 316, we are looking at, this is moving northeast at roughly 45 to 50 miles an hour. So we'll get the latest update on this particular tornado warning, which again is just south of the one in Columbus. This is until 4:30 4:30 p.m. We are looking at radar indicated rotation again. This is now moving at 65 miles an hour. Jeez. So again, we're not looking at all these storms going the same speed. A lot of different things are coming into play, different variables. So in a matter of minutes, we're looking at some quick changes with the overall speed and perhaps even the intensity of these storms as they're moving through the area. So again, this tornado warning in effect for Franklin, Pickaway County. We have another tornado warning again just to the north where we're looking at an additional tornado warning covering parts of Franklin County, and it's looking like, again, this is one of two that we're looking here in central Ohio. Jerry?
So, Ross, we want to take a look at our tower camera, as you were asking for a couple moments ago, that just shows the absolute reduction of visibility to next to zero. That's on our weather backup right now, and we can see again from the tower camera that's showing the reduced visibility and those extremely heavy downpours coming through. That's just one of the factors of this particular storm. As we've been talking about, the storms are moving at some different speeds. I've seen reports of trees down, hail between 1 and 1.5 inches, some wind gusts between 45 and 53 miles an hour, and of course we're still under the threat of that tornado warning for Franklin County, including downtown Columbus. So that's the one thing we're watching right now. So let's take a look at those two particular warnings right now and the cells, not necessarily focusing where the tornado warning ends, Ross, but where it's the center of the storm is and moving that ahead, anticipating, as the National Weather Service may do, where this particular storm cell is going to be moving off to the northeast at, again, about 45 to 55 miles an hour. And even that number is not exact. As you just mentioned, that storm to the south, which we'll get to in a moment, that was moving at 65 miles an hour. So currently Columbus, downtown, Gahanna 428, Blacklick 431, New Albany 434. At the moment, those particular towns and communities are not under the tornado warning, but if future track of the storm or past performance is an indication of what's going to happen, we expect that may be extended, and that's concerning to us. Now the southern storm right now, Lockbourne down toward Commercial Point. This storm is taking somewhat of an ominous appearance. That doesn't necessarily mean it's producing a tornado, but obviously very concerning to Ross and I right now. Town right now, Lithopolis, about 4:29 p.m. is that storm. If I recall correctly, Ross is moving at 65 miles an hour.
Yep.
And still is producing that tornado warning. That goes for another 15 to 30 minutes. So there's two tornado warnings currently. Let's expand that view just a second and show the active alerts across the area right now. Franklin County, primarily from Franklin County northeast, and we're still seeing that trailing line off to the back, which is concerning as well. This area just to the west and south of Harrisburg. This is parts of the southwestern corner of Franklin County, and then that's moving off to the northeast, filling back in, and then the storm down to the south, already exiting Darbyville, but still around Asheville and over toward Lockbourne and the points off toward the east. Another area that previously was under a warning, but currently is not, that's down to the south and extreme parts of Pickaway County, Ross, and Pike counties. That warning popped up for about 15 or 20 minutes and then was taken down again, but we're still watching the multiple waves of severe weather rolling through. And even in some of these storms which have not produced a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning, they are producing some damaging winds. So please, if you're in the path of these storms, which we've been tracking for you, or certainly in some of these warned storms, that's an area where you want to certainly take shelter and keep your family safe. So closer inspection right now, it's tornado warning, Franklin, Madison, Pickaway until 4:30. Tornado warning to the south, Franklin and Pickaway also until 4:30 p.m. These are the two primary areas that we're watching right now. It does not mean that at 4:30 that we're going to go off the air and you're going to be safe and this is going to be over. These storms are going to continue to move off toward the northeast, and there are more storms behind that we're currently watching right now. So inspection, we're trying to find any indication within the radar scan of what we refer to as a couplet or some shear or some spin in the atmosphere. We're not seeing that right now, but we're continuing to watch that evolving during the course of the afternoon. But clearly the National Weather Service is in agreement that even without seeing that particular signature, that these storms are still very strong. Kind of a cleaner look right now as we're looking at that. Now, this is the shear tracker is an indication of the historical path of the storm and the shear, that twist in the storm. Oftentimes these tornadoes start inside the storm above the ground and then work their way down to the ground. That's, of course, when the situation becomes dire. We have not yet seen that today, and that's good news in the situation, but clearly these storms are producing some rotation, and that's why we're watching the National Weather Service continue these tornado warnings, Ross. So perhaps, Ross, you can take us through a quick tour, if you will, of Columbus. I do think that based on the history of the storm that it might not be warned on, but still areas in the northeastern parts of Franklin County are not out of the woods.
Yeah, and you could see clearly that this storm, again, still kind of outpacing the tornado warning that we've just had highlighted there. So again, pretty much all of Franklin County, this is, again, heads up. You need to make sure you're in your safe space. And again, not even including, areas that are inside the polygon where we're looking at this particular tornado warning. Again, this one was in effect until 4:30. The National Weather Service has been on top of it, updating, kind of critiquing and trimming up these polygons to what the latest radar information is showing us as to where these potential storms are moving next. And these aren't, this isn't one particular big storm. We're looking at two individual tornado warnings, two cells, if you will, that are moving through. And again, you can clearly see, still including parts of what is eastern Madison County. This is now continuing to kind of push out to the east. Pickaway County should be getting an update as things are moving again, generally to the north and east for you folks there. So for Commercial Point, things will be clearing up for you as well. Harrisburg, again, just on the fringe there between Madison County and Pickaway County. These storms are moving north-northeast. They're not moving directly east. So in these particular situations, again, just if you're hearing the sirens, you're getting the alerts, you just want to take shelter immediately. Now is not the time to, take some pictures, see what's going on outside, especially if you're under one of these tornado warnings, which haven't seen any updates from the National Weather Service with these particular warnings that we're looking at. Again, it looks like we will probably see an update here within the next, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes with these two particular storms, because again, they have just been kind of outpacing what we've been seeing on the radar. And again, that just comes down to a dynamic, changing environment where we're looking at these storms picking speed and then just kind of skirting through and just kind of picking up momentum, where again, we haven't seen any confirmation for tornadoes on the ground, but especially with what we're likely looking at with a scenario where we're looking at some heavy rain, we could be looking at some rain wrap involvement with some of these storms. So again, what you're looking at is maybe just thinking it's rain, but some very strong winds kind of nestled in within the core of these storms, where we could be looking at particularly a tornado on the ground, an extremely dangerous situation. So again, any friends, family, give your neighbors a call. Again, don't leave your safe space to go outside and grab something real quick or whatever it is. You do not want to be going outside right now. If you're in, Franklin County, northeast over towards Gahanna, Whitehall area, we're not included in this particular tornado warning at the moment. But again, these storms are outpacing these warnings. So if you're, upstream from these storms, you definitely want to take shelter now and be proactive, because we are definitely going to be seeing some changes to these alerts as the National Weather Service sends that information to us, and we then regurgitate that back to you. And again, this particularly dangerous situation, Jerry, we're looking at a scenario where we're looking at some high winds, even with some of the severe thunderstorm warnings. That's going to produce some damage, and even in some instances might be as strong as a weak tornado, But in these two particular situations with these tornado warnings that we're looking at, again, they are moving to the northeast, and it's looking like we're probably going to either see them get extended or expired here within the next 10 minutes, given the expiration date that we have, what the National Weather Service
So
has
suffice
told
to
us.
say, we're going to be on for at least 10 more minutes covering these particular storms. I want to do a couple of things. Let's put that into motion, of course, showing the quick northeastward movement of that. The main two cells that we're watching, one right around eastern parts of Franklin County. National Weather Service has not yet extended that particular, in fact, they just did right now, not a tornado warning, but a severe thunderstorm warning to the northeast of Franklin County. So let's take a particular track at that, Ross, from this cell right here that we've been watching. We suspect that these two actually kind of merging together. So if you can see the radar for a second, that orange outline, that's indicating a newly issued severe thunderstorm warning. The history of these storms, even though they have not produced tornadoes, have been producing some damaging winds and some hail. So let's actually look at Reynoldsburg at 428, Pataskala 435, Granville 444, Newark 449, Dresden about 510. So even though we're looking at the eastern edge of this particular warning, these cells have a history of getting out there. Newark, for example, is under the gun. I also want to draw your attention to the back edge of that storm around Lockburn, and then down to the southwestern corner, just southeast of West Jeff around Harrisburg. We're not out of the woods there. That is still under a tornado warning, but the newest one we're drawing your attention to right now is severe thunderstorm warning for parts of Delaware, Fairfield, eastern and northern parts of Franklin County, and Licking County that goes until 5:15 p.m. So obviously we're tracking these severe thunderstorms as they move through, and that's the main area of concern right now. So let's take a closer inspection of these particular cells, one around Franklin County, Ross, if we could, and then the one to the south and east of that. But the Franklin County cell first. You see between Columbus and Gahanna, we're out toward Bexley, the airport, Whitehall. Obviously, if anybody is coming to or from the airport or flying in or trying to get out, there's going to be a ground stoppage and a delay at least for a short period of time. Bexley and out 40 in Whitehall around 270, and then out 62 toward and out toward New Albany and 161. Little Turtle, you know that area. That's an area we're watching very closely. Downtown Columbus, in and out of the showers, and just because you might be in a yellow or green does not mean you're out of the woods. Again, this tornado warning still goes on for a few more minutes, and this newly issued severe thunderstorm warning carries off toward the northeast. So those areas, again, around Bexley, in the east central and the northeastern parts of Franklin County, around Gahanna, southeast of Westerville, over toward New Albany. You know those areas pretty well. Out 161, those areas are under the threat right now from this severe thunderstorm warning. And even behind that, to the west of that, we're looking at, if we can expand that view just a bit, those areas we're looking just closest. We have an update coming then from Yolanda and Andrew, who have been waiting by very patiently and some gathering information. So that'll allow Ross and I to get a quick drink of water and catch our breath. We hand it over to you two for a quick update.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Ross. We do have some information about Columbus City Schools. Your child may, if they're not already home, they may be late because CCS is rerouting all school buses that have not finished their routes to a safe area to kind of wait out this storm. We do know that we are under that watch right now and tornado warning right now in the Columbus area. So they want the buses to kind of go somewhere safe and just wait this out. And
we've been closely monitoring the AEP outage map right now, not really seeing that large number. However, there are some scattered outages across the Columbus area, so don't be surprised if you go home this evening and your lights are out. If you're trying to get home right now, it is going to be a hot mess. If you're taking a look on I-70 right now, there's a crash working on I-70 southbound right there at James Road. You're also going to find delays as you make your way up 70 and making your way outside 71, making your way outside of the city of Columbus limits because of that heavy downpour right now. Let's get you back over to Jerry for another update.
Good information coming in. Andrew and Yolanda, thank you very much. You've seen some of this area of red. I've been watching our continuing coverage kind of being trimmed off. And the National Weather Service, of course, the official issuer of these warnings, has been doing a good job keeping up with these particular storms. I mean, we've been doing our best to keep you abreast of the situation as it evolves. Still, the area is under concern. That tornado warning for Franklin County that goes for 6 more minutes. But extending that beyond is a severe thunderstorm warning that goes for a while beyond that. That goes until 5:15 p.m. So closer inspection right now. Let's go down toward Groveport, Ross, and track this particular storm out. It still has a potential there of producing some damage. That's right along 33. You're down toward Groveport and down Canal Winchester. That area, of course, with the darker red and deeper red. Even though you may not be experiencing that tornadic situation, which would be a bit of a blessing, you still have the threat of some extremely heavy rain, high winds, and some hail. These storms to their west have had a history of producing inch to inch and a half. That's ping pong or golf ball size hail. That can do some significant damage as well. But these storms, again, moving off toward the northeast. You see Bryce on the map right now. That under the gun until about next 5 to 10 minutes as that cell moves on through. So let's expand the view just a bit and gain some perspective right now and give everybody a quick update on what we've been watching. This particular line really took on a life of its own about 3:30 this afternoon. So we've been on the air for nearly an hour right now, watching that really quickly push off toward the northeast. The storms have been moving between 45, 50, even 65 miles an hour. That's just the speed of the storms. When you tack on the winds or the possibility of a tornado or even thunderstorm gusts, that threat increases dramatically. We're not seeing a ton of lightning here, and that's not necessarily an indication that these storms are not severe. These are just not, your summertime lightning producing storms, but we've seen, again, gusty winds, hail, and some damage. We're also watching something else very closely, Ross, and you see that first line coming through, all the warnings here, tornado warnings, thunderstorm warnings. We're seeing the second line. Again, we're trying to find a bit of a bright spot for you here. The second line still means business, but there are no warnings currently with this particular line of thunderstorms. So there's some lightning, some thunder, some wind, and some rain, but we're not yet severe, not tracking the second line of tornadoes. So fingers crossed that once we get past this threat initially in the next 30 minutes or so, that we're going to be watching the next line come through. Hopefully it does not produce any warnings. Now, let's zoom in right now as you did on the storm around Grove City in this particular cell, kind of taking on and keeping its identity. Where you see this darker red, down 62, there's 270 right there, and there's 71. There's Frank Road 104 just off toward the north. This is an indication, of course, of the heaviest part of that particular cell. That's why the National Weather Service is still keeping that tornado warning up for a few more minutes. I'm not sure if it's going to be extended or not, but we're watching that very carefully because even if it's not extended, the threat still continues for areas south of Columbus. Again, there's High Street, there's 104, there's 23, 62 in this direction, Upper Arlington right there. For the moment, you're not in the severe weather threat, but don't let your guard down. We're really looking for the areas right now around downtown Columbus, points off toward the south and then over toward Alum Creek Drive and then down 670 toward Bexley and then down towards 70 and the 70 split off toward the east. So around the hilltop as well. So we're looking at those areas in and around Franklin County and central parts of Columbus under the threat right now. But even beyond that, Ross, that we're still watching that second line coming through in the next 60 to 90 minutes.
Yeah, and just from what I was looking at, just looking at some of the latest weather analysis that we have and chatting with the National Weather Service, it's looking like that the main focus for the severe threat, the greatest severe threat, is here in central Ohio right now where we're looking at these storms. And it's looking like a lot of these storms easily bringing 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts as well. So while we might not be looking at severe weather, you're still looking at some pretty gnarly storms moving through, regardless of not being under a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning. And it's looking like as these storms that are moving in to west central Ohio now that are kind of exiting east central Indiana behind this front, they're going to spread storm activity into this evening across central Ohio again. So that secondary line that Jerry and I were just talking about, but it's looking like that overall severe weather threat looks to diminish here locally in Columbus as we approach that 6 o'clock time frame, which again is where we have that tornado watch, which again, the watch, very different from the warnings. The watch was the heads up. These are the ingredients, and this is just the proof in the pudding that we're looking at these tornado warnings across central Ohio. Again, these two particular warnings, again, in effect until 4:30. So we got a minute left on both of these. We could see some changes here in a few minutes, but again, wouldn't be surprised if some of these, we haven't seen any strong indicators for that of any rotation, however, strong enough that where we could see a tornado produced. But given the time frame, and of course we kind of have that severe thunderstorm warning extending with this, we just got confirmation for at least one of the tornado warnings. They have been expired for Franklin County, and I believe that might be the one that's in southeastern Franklin County. And again, I have both of them highlighted here, but it'll take a second for that to get dropped from our system. But you can see things have cleared up quite a bit in southeastern parts of Franklin County. You can see that this individual cell is now moving over towards Fairfield County. I'll take a closer look at that since you haven't really seen much activity in Fairfield County other than just the alert that we had with the severe thunderstorm warning about 5-10 minutes ago. So again, looking at this tornado warning, most likely the one in southeastern Franklin County, that should be dropping here momentarily. But within this severe thunderstorm warning, there, that was the one. So again, it looks like we actually had both of them drop as well. So that tornado warning was for not only that in southeastern Franklin County, but the individual cell that was over downtown Columbus area as well. So it's looking like that things have cleared up, Jerry. We do not have any active tornado warnings, but as we've been tracking this, a lot of changes have been unfolding in the past 20 minutes or so.
So Ross, we have some new information, as you said. That's good news that the tornado warning is just taken down, but Westerville Schools has delayed their dismissal further still. The original dismissal was about 10 minutes because of the severe weather. If parents are there now, the district says they can come into the school. This is new information just in. So the storm is impacting, even though it has not yet produced a tornado, which is good news, as we mentioned earlier, it still is impacting some of the schools across the area as they are doing what they can to keep themselves and their students safe. So again, we're watching that situation in this last part of the cell. That tornado warning has been taken down, allowing us to collectively catch our breath for just a moment, but we're still watching that area to the northeast of downtown Columbus and that area to the north around Johnstown over toward Pataskala. Those storms just look nasty. Now behind that, a live look right now, and this is from one of our cameras, and you see the Columbus pipe stack there in the background around the Crew Stadium. I wouldn't say it's wall-to-wall sunshine, but certainly bright skies and a dramatic change from how things were just about 15 to 20 minutes ago. That does not mean we're out of the woods. We're still tracking that second line of storms coming through Dayton and I-75 corridor that is arcing to the northeast. So we're watching a couple of those areas carefully. So Ross, let's take a closer look at these two storms right here around Pickerington. Let's put a track on that guy, move it off toward the northeast toward Granville. The exact speed of that, again, I think 45 to 55 miles an hour. With that in mind, if you're around Pataskala, Licking County, crossing over 70, that's Jersey Township, Alexandria, Granville, and Utica between 4:36 and 4:55 p.m. The southern storm, Pickerington, Violet Township, Buckeye Lake, Lake, that's 447, Heath at 450, and Newark at 453. So we've been noticing a couple of things. The speed of these storms is changing and evolving, and as they are, the length of those particular warnings has been extending just to show the threat is extending. All these are moving from southwest to northeast, so we're watching that be consistent, and we're watching the threat stay the same. Further off toward the west, Ross, these storms had a history of producing, I think I saw an 8-inch tree down, some 1-inch to 1.5 inch hail. That's ping pong golf ball size hail, and wind gusts in some locations up to 60+ miles an hour. So we're going to turn our attention right now, still keeping a very close watch to Franklin County and parts to the northeast around Licking County. But to the west, we're watching the second line coming back in. So maybe you can pause that then for a minute. I'll get out of the way and you can just show the track of those particular cells. Again, no warnings with these particular storms, but these also are the leading edge of what could be a very gusty evening coming up between about 5 and 6 p.m.
Yeah, Jerry, I'm just putting a long track on this. Excuse me, I'm trying to fix this. But essentially, yeah, these storms that are moving back in, you might be curious now that the tornado warnings have lifted. You still want to be, making sure that you are, texting your friends, family, loved ones, checking in on everyone. But you don't want to be, running outside, because not only are we seeing more storms coming in, we're also seeing some lightning associated with these storms as well. So a particularly dangerous situation nonetheless, regardless, with us not seeing any current severe thunderstorm warnings in these areas. But again, this particular line that's going to be moving through, you can see here the time frame looking overall as this next wall of showers and storms moves through the area. This is going to be approaching London here in about 4:34 p.m. In London, Delaware, 4:47 p.m., that secondary line. And here in Columbus, just right after 5 o'clock, we're looking at this next line coming through, Gahanna 5:10 and 5:24 Mount Vernon time as well. So again, we do have another live look for you, so we want to go to that. In this particular location is 270 and 71 on the south side. And you can kind of see here, just looking at the ominous clouds in the distance, obviously things have cleared up as well. Visibility looking A-OK, but certainly still looking at some very dark skies, probably seeing quite a bit of shelf clouds associated with some of these individual storms moving through as well. And again, if you happen to see, what looks to be some limited visibility in front of you, that's probably you creeping up on some of these storms moving through. So hydro planning definitely likely with these particular storms, as they've been producing some pretty heavy rain in a small amount of time, despite moving fairly quick at 55 to 60 miles an hour. So again, looking at these severe thunderstorm warnings that we have, just to highlight, looking at our live radar, we have some extremely heavy rain that is moving through parts of Pickerington. Stopping this for you, can see things will be clearing up here in Columbus momentarily. Still looking at some pretty heavy rain that's falling just downtown. And again, we're looking over towards Bexley, Whitehall. We're going to continue to see some heavy rain over towards Gahanna as well. But Jerry, it's looking like we are, in the clear, so to speak, with some of these severe storms here in Columbus, but still just to our east, and even in southern Franklin County, while not included in the severe thunderstorm warning, still looking at possibly some dangerous weather with some heavy rain, some strong gusty winds, as most of these storms, nonetheless, not even being severe, have been moving at about 50 miles an hour.
Yes, you've said that a couple of times, and we're watching these individual cells. This one simply is not giving up. Even though it's not producing a tornado warning at this time, the cell across southern parts of Franklin County, moving off toward the northeast, still means business. At the very least, some very heavy rain, some possibility of some gusty, damaging winds, and some small hail. The worst of which right now, there's a 23 south just intersecting with 270. There's 104 right now. So if you're traveling there, planning on traveling there, expecting somebody traveling from there, they're going to be likely delayed. There's Alum Creek Drive right now near the dog shelter, I believe. And then there's the cut over to 70 going east. And then there's 16 in Whitehall and Bexley. So those areas, as we're tracking these particular storms, are the most areas that we're concerned about right now from the severe thunderstorm warning that's in effect. We also have an update coming from Andrew and Yolanda right now, some new information coming in to 10 TV.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Again, we told you about this earlier, but CCS, Columbus City Schools, is rerouting all school buses that have not finished their routes to a safe area to wait out the storm. So if you have a child that has not been dropped off at home, they may be late. This is just in the newsroom as well. Dismissal is now delayed for Westerville City Schools.
Yeah, they originally planned dismissal by about 10 minutes, delayed dismissal by 10 minutes because of the severe weather that moved through that area. If parents are there in the area, the district asking you to come into the school and to get your student for dismissal. Again, those storms still sweeping through the area. You can expect traffic delays across the area. We've been monitoring our cameras across the area and those outages that are scattered right now.
No widespread outages at this point right now, but you can, expect if there's high winds out there, it could be the electricity lines and things like that falling down. So, but we do not have widespread outages at this point, and that is the good news. So right now we're going to send it back over to Jerry and Ross.
Thanks. We're going to watch this storm and this track one more time for you, and then we're going to cut over to programming for just a minute. Then we're going to come back at 5 o'clock with an updated new information for news and weather for you. A quick look north to south. There is line number 1. There's that severe thunderstorm warning till 5:30, moving off toward the northeast. So areas around downtown Columbus, Franklin County, the eastern suburbs, Bexley included, Johnstown, Pataskala, Pickerington, and then points off toward the northeast. Be on the lookout there. Again, take shelter. Don't go outside. We don't want pictures of these storms. And even after these storms pass, we're not done, Ross. We're looking at another line coming back in, just about to enter parts of Delaware County, Union County, Madison County, and down toward parts of Fayette County. That moving northeast at about 50 miles an hour, too. Saving grace with the second line of storms, if there is any, that the first line kind of worked over the atmosphere and perhaps stabilized things just a bit. The second line of storms, though, still will have some gusty winds, some very heavy rain, the possibility of some hail, and at any moment they could go severe. So we're watching this very carefully. The other thing we want to let you know is that while there is a tornado watch still in effect until 6 p.m., the National Weather Service has just given us indication that as counties clear from that tornado watch, as the second line moves through and things begin to settle down, that we're watching that tornado watch begin to erode from west to east. So it still does technically include Marion, Columbus, points off toward the east, Zanesville, Nelsonville to the southeast, Chillicothe, and down toward Ross and Pike counties as well. But I fully expect once that second line passes by, we get through about 5:30, that things should be improving in that category as well. We thank you for joining us during the course of the afternoon. Hope you don't mind us breaking into coverage. It's what we do to keep you and your family safe. We'll see you again in about 20 minutes.